welcome back to the channel, guys. Today on Demigod ENT, we're going to be tier listing every single Spider-Man theatrical release that's released onto the big screen, that's released in theaters, starting with Tobey Maguire Spider-Man to Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man films, to the Tom Holland Spider-Man films, his MCU trilogy, all the way to the two animated films that we've gotten from Sony for the Spider-Verse films. Now, with that being said, let's just jump right into the tier list. Let's go. All right, as you guys can see, we have every single Spider-Man film that's been released in theaters here, from the Tobey Maguire trilogy to the Andrew Garfield, Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, to the MCU trilogy with Tom Holland, and then we have the Across the Spider-Verse and Into the Spider-Verse film. So with that being said, let's get into this, man. Let's go. We're going to start from the very beginning. We're going to take it back to Tobey Maguire. I believe this came out in 2001, right? Maybe 2002. And man, this film has aged very interestingly. You could still go back and watch it now. It's still a great movie, but it does have a little bit of age showing on it compared to the second and third film in the trilogy. But this is the perfect classic story of Spider-Man. And man, I don't know. Do we go masterpiece with it? I don't think we do, because there is a better film in this trilogy, right? And that's Spider-Man 2. So with this, we're going to go with amazing to start it off. Perfect, right? Amazing Spider-Man. We're going to start it off with the amazing tier rating on the list. Now let's go ahead and get into the second film, Spider-Man 2. This is my favorite Spider-Man movie out of this specific trilogy, not in general, but this is a perfect Spider-Man movie from beginning to end, from the villain inside of here. Not that the villain in the first film is not great, right? You get Green Goblin in the first film, William Dafoe, he's amazing, but there is more of like a comic element to the film that's aged differently compared to this one, whereas in Spider-Man 2, this is a very modern superhero film, and one that I really appreciate. Now, hey man, we're just gonna throw it in masterpiece. This is a masterpiece film right here. This right here is what made me a huge Spider-Man fan as a kid. Now, let's move on to a very controversial film in the top, Tobey Maguire, all of his Spider-Man films. That is Spider-Man 3. Very controversial. And the reason this is controversial is because the third act of this film, because if you go back and watch it now, you'll realize, oh, it's actually a lot better than you've been hearing about this film when you go back and see it. And that really the only problem comes into the third act, when they try to shove too many villains at once into the third act. They try to have 3 Spider-Man villains at once in the third act of this film, when really it just needed to be more condensed, more focused. 1 to 2 was more than enough. And yeah, if you didn't know, the reason that happened is because behind the scenes, Sony forced them to put Venom into this film. Sam Raimi did not want to have Venom in this film, which is why you get this weird film with Spider-Man 3 with the weird ending. But honestly, this is not a terrible movie. I feel like we need another rating. You know what? Let's add another one. I don't think any Spider-Man movies are terrible. Let's change this to good. And then we're going to bump this up. And we're going to put Spider-Man 3 in good. I think it's a good movie when you go back and watch it. I think it hasn't aged that terribly, from how controversial it was when it first came out to it still being kind of controversial today. But let's move on to an even more controversial Spider-Man film, that being The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. Now, Amazing Spider-Man 1, I actually really enjoyed this movie. I think Andrew Garfield did a really great job inside of this film. His acting is amazing. He's an amazing actor, right? And the storytelling is amazing. They even take a different approach here, where you're looking into more of Peter's parents and finding out they have some secret spy elements going on. I thought that was interesting. And yeah, they do the classic story where Uncle Ben gets shot, of course. They do the great power comes great responsibility inside of this film. And overall, they just redid the first Tobey Maguire movie, but tweaked some things. And I think this is a really good film. I think it's pretty good, honestly. I think it holds up very well. I'm gonna put it into amazing. I think it could hold up there with Tobey Maguire's first one. Of course, there's things to be said about Peter is a little too cool in this movie for someone who's supposed to be a nerd who gets bullied all the time, right? He's a cool skateboard kid. But overall, I mean, his Spider-Man, his suit, the Spider-Man suit is brilliant inside of this film. Same with Spider-Man 2. But yeah, amazing Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire suit, fantastic. His Spider-Man, the way he acts and everything, fantastic. And yeah, it goes in the amazing tier. It earns its name. This is for sure the amazing Spider-Man. Now, where of course these films happen to let down is with the second film here, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, honestly, I remember watching this film in theaters. This came out, what, 2014, I want to say. I remember going to the theaters opening weekend to see this movie. I remember being very excited because Spider-Man's always been one of my favorite superheroes since I was a little kid. And yeah, this film right here is just not it. It's not that great. It really isn't. And one of the main problems with The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is Jamie Foxx's character, Electro, inside of this film. Now, while I love Jamie Foxx as an actor, and while Electro is amazing in the future, No Way Home film, in this movie, it's just not it. I mean, from the gap in the teeth being closed once he gets his superpowers to the horrible little nerdy act Jamie Foxx is trying to put on to his like weird obsession with Spider-Man, like he's part of like Spider-Man's fan club pretty much. I don't know, man. This film is just not it. You also get, of course, the Green Goblin inside of here for his first introduction into the Amazing Spider-Man universe. And man, I don't know. The Green Goblin, he was creepy. It was okay, but it wasn't great. The end sequence where they end up killing Gwen Stacy, that was very risky. That was straight out of the comics. I did like that they took that risk, but you're going to kill the love interest off in the second film. I feel like that's a third film thing. I don't know, because it's like where do they plan to go after that? Spider-Man always needs a love interest in every single film. Where are they going to bring in Mary Jane into the Amazing Spider-Man 3? I guess we'll never know because this movie tanked, it bombed, and we're never going to get an Amazing Spider-Man 3. At least I don't think so at the time of this recording. There's been talks about, whether they're going to do one or not, considering they re-released every Spider-Man film in theaters. And if you guys didn't know, this was the lowest at the box office for the re-release of all the Spider-Man films. So because of that, man, maybe I'm gonna need to bring back the bad tier list. This is a decent film. It's a decent film. It has some redeemable qualities. It's not garbage. It's not, complete trash. So we're gonna put it in decent. I don't think there's necessarily been any straight up bad Spider-Man films that has dropped, which is why I took bad off of this list, okay? And now we're going to move on to one of my favorite Spider-Man movies. I think this film is very underrated, and that is the MCU's Tom Holland. That is Spider-Man Homecoming. I think this is a very underrated film. Oh, my bad. We have good and great mixed up. There we go. But I think this is a very underrated film. This movie gets a lot of hate, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because, Spider-Man is his mentor inside of here. It doesn't go the traditional route, with an Uncle Ben killing and a great power, great responsibility, which I like and which I appreciate. We didn't need to see that again. And shout out to, Kevin Feige, shout out to the MCU for keeping this movie fresh and not just redoing and rehashing a third version of the typical Spider-Man origin story. This one, it takes a different turn. He gets the suit from Tony Stark, of course. And yeah, he's sort of trying to figure it out. He's trying to take on a threat that's above his level at this point. Really, he's taking on like an Avengers level threat almost with the Vulture. And Iron Man tells him to back off, but because he's Spider-Man, he can't. He has to try and do the right things. And, he makes some mistakes along the way, but in the end, he learns a great lesson, which is to keep it at, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man level. And overall, Tom Holland is an amazing Spider-Man, no pun intended, and he does a great job with this film. So because of that, I'm going to give Tom Holland's Homecoming, Spider-Man Homecoming, I'm gonna put this in fact, we're gonna swap this out. We're gonna swap the Amazing Spider-Man down to great, because I forgot that we had great there. We're gonna put it in great. It's a great film. Is it an amazing or is it a masterpiece? No. But this right here, I think this is an amazing Spider-Man film. I really like Homecoming, and yeah, go check out Homecoming again. Very underrated. Got too much hate when it dropped. But yeah, let's move on to what is this? Far From Home. Spider-Man Far From Home. Again, the Tom Holland trilogy is fantastic. It really is. I love the MCU Spider-Man. And this film right here, very interesting. We have Jake Gyllenhaal playing Mysterio inside of this film. We also get Nick Fury back, except it's not really Nick Fury, which you learn in the end credits scene, right? And yeah, Tom Holland's back. We get a brand new suit inside of this film. We get the red with the black accents. I really enjoyed that suit. We get the Mysterio storyline, Mysterio as a villain. Very solid, very interesting. I love the way that they showcased Mysterio on the big screen inside of this film, and the way he tricks people, messes with them while using the drones. He's making these monsters appear out of thin air and make it seem like attacks are going on that aren't, so he can make himself the hero. And this is a very solid entry into Tom Holland's Spider-Man universe. Yeah, I really enjoy it, man. Of course, him and Zendaya, they progress more in this film, him and MJ. So they end up having that love story. They finally get the kiss there. And this is a very wholesome, very solid Spider-Man film. Again, I really feel like the Tom Holland trilogy is underrated outside of No Way Home. People gave No Way Home, its love, its respect. But hey, his first and second film, Homecoming and Far From Home, really great Spider-Man films. Let's go ahead. Is it better than Homecoming though? That's the question. Is it better than Homecoming? I don't know. Do we put it up there right next to Homecoming, right next to Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 1? Man, I don't know if I can do that. I'm going to put this in great. It's a great Spider-Man film. I'd probably give it like an 8, 8.5 out of 10, right? Up here we're batting 9s. Of course, masterpiece, we're batting 10s. Goods, we're batting like 7s, and then decent, we're batting like a 6, okay? And that kind of works with all the film's placements right now. So yeah, Far From Home, Spider-Man, that's a great tier. And let's finish off here. Ooh, do we do No Way Home now before these right here? You know what? I'm going to skip No Way Home. I'm going to save it as one of the last two. And we're going to move on to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Now, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, an amazing film, right? This right here really showed that Sony is capable of making great Spider-Man movies, and that they just don't really know how to do it when it comes to live action films, as we've seen with like Madam Web, as we've seen with the Venom series. I really do not like the Venom trilogy that they're going with. I know that movie gets a lot of love, but let's not go off on that tangent right now, okay? We'll save the Venom tangent for another video. I do have a movie review on Venom 2. Go watch that. Go check that out. But yeah, so Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, this is a masterpiece. Straight up, this is a masterpiece. It's not even really something that, ooh, better than Spider-Man 1 though. We're going to say this is amazing. This is an amazing Spider-Man movie. I really enjoy Miles Morales inside of this film. I really enjoy the animation style, everything that they did with it. The new characters come in here, the other Spider-Man from the other universes. Am I that huge of a fan of that? I don't know. I felt like the Porky Pig Spider-Man was a little weird, a little cheesy, overly cartoonish. This movie is hard to critique. It really is, because it's so fantastic, and it's borderline masterpiece. I'll put it ahead of the list. How about that? I'll put it ahead of the list. It's damn near a masterpiece. This is an amazing film. We get the origin story of Miles Morales. We get him finding himself as Spider-Man. We get the different, multiversal shifts in here, which eventually the MCU started doing also. And overall, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, this is an amazing Spider-Man movie. This definitely defined Spider-Man. And should we save Across the Spider-Verse for last? Let's save this one for last, and let's jump right back into the Tom Holland trilogy. Let's go with Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, Spider-Man No Way Home, this is a fantastic movie, but honestly, I feel like outside of theaters, this movie does not hit the same. I've seen this movie 3 times in theaters when it released, maybe 4 times. I went back to see it a lot. I seen it opening night. I think I went to see it Friday, and then I seen it like the following week after that. And every single time the audience popped. I've never heard, outside of maybe Infinity War and Endgame, I've never heard an audience pop like that. Every single time I went to see the film, the surprise on people's faces when they brought back Tobey Maguire, when they brought back Andrew Garfield. Yes, it was, a huge rumor that was talked about. If you were following this movie before it released, this film, was heavily rumored to have those two in it. But at the end of the day, none of us really thought that the MCU was actually going to do that. But they did. They did. They did the impossible. They brought them back. We got all 3 of our live action Spider-Man on the big screen at once. What an amazing experience. I'll never forget that theatrical experience. I went with my friends opening night. I was mind blown multiple times while watching this film, from the Daredevil cameo at the beginning of the film to the introduction of, Tobey and Andrew back into this film, from us having like our own Sinister Six inside of this film and all these different villains, and the way that the movie perfectly manages to balance all of that with its writing. And man, what an amazing film. We get William Dafoe back inside of here. We get all the classic villains. We get a better version of Electro inside of here. I don't really care for the Lizard inside of this film. I thought the Lizard was better in The Amazing Spider-Man 1. But man, we get Dr. Octavius back in here. This is a crazy movie right here. This is a masterpiece of a film. The only one reason why I don't want to put it in masterpiece is because I watched this movie 1 to 2 times outside of theaters, just at home on my screen by myself, or with a family member, and without the theatrical pop that this movie gets out of a huge audience, it just doesn't hit the same. It really doesn't. You start to realize, oh, the audience was adding so much to this movie. It really was. That being said, let's judge it just straight off theatrical, which is a masterpiece. Okay, we're gonna put No Way Home in masterpiece. At home, I feel like it is batting down to it, the amazing level, but let's leave it at masterpiece. Okay, all 3 times in theaters it hit. I'll never forget that. And now, moving on to the most recent Spider-Man film release, Across the Spider-Verse, which wasn't on the list. I went and added it to the list. This right here, man, this was something special. I went and seen this movie in theaters maybe 4 times, maybe 5 times. I went back to see this movie so many times. The very first time I watched it, I wasn't that hyped for it because while Into the Spider-Verse is a great movie, I did see it in theaters when it released. It is not one of my personal favorite Spider-Man films. It's just not. But yeah, when I went to see Across the Spider-Verse, I didn't know how to think, what to feel. I didn't know, what expectations to have for the movie necessarily. I was just hoping that they succeeded in making another great Spider-Man film. And they blew the socks off here. They blew this film out of the water. This is the best version of a Spider-Man film to be put on the screen, in my personal opinion. Now, man, Miles Morales inside of this film, the multiversal elements inside of this film. We get more Gwen Stacy as her Spider-Man inside of this film. The way this film opens with the drums beating and the amazing soundtrack that accompanies this film. Of course, the first soundtrack, Into the Spider-Verse, I didn't even talk about that. That was a great soundtrack. But this one, produced by Metro Boomin, the entire album, this was even better than the first one. I was listening to songs off this soundtrack, outside of the Sunflower, everyone was listening to that off the first soundtrack, but outside of Sunflower, it wasn't hitting like that, the Inside the Spider-Verse. But Across the Spider-Verse, I was listening to multiple songs off this soundtrack. I watched this movie multiple times in theaters. Every time I watched it, it got better and better. I love what they did with this film. Of course, it ends on a cliffhanger, kind of, honestly. it's not too much of a cliffhanger as people make it out to be. This film does have a complete story when you watch it, you know, from beginning to end. And yeah, this right here was a very special theater experience for me personally. Man, I love this movie from beginning to end. So with that being said, let's drop this in masterpiece. This is a masterpiece film. I'm going to put this in #1 spot. I know that's going to be kind of controversial. You know, Spider-Man 2 is everyone's favorite, but we're going to drop it in right there at the very top. I think this is the best Spider-Man film to drop on the big screen whatsoever, in theatrical release whatsoever. So yeah, that's our list right there. Let's take a look back at it. We got Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, masterpiece. We got Spider-Man 2, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 2, masterpiece. And we got Spider-Man No Way Home from Tom Holland, masterpiece. Also, the way this ends, it's like, yes, we get the Tom Holland trilogy, but they set it up for another film, for it to keep going. That was very interesting. I didn't even talk about Doctor Strange's addition to this film. Doctor Strange inside this movie, amazing. The scene we get between him and Spider-Man where they're fighting each other, brilliant. Real cinema. Amazing tier list. We have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Okay, that definitely defines the word amazing for Spider-Man, along with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 1. Damn, should I have this in front of this? You know, I really didn't expect to like these animated films as much as I do, to be having them at the very front of their list. But it is what it is. We're going to leave that there. And then moving on, we have Spider-Man Homecoming. This is an amazing film, an underrated film. Maybe I might want to drop it to the great, though. No, it's not on the same. It's a tier above Amazing Spider-Man, in my opinion. I like the way this is set up. Great list. We have Amazing Spider-Man 1, Andrew Garfield's. And then we have Spider-Man Far From Home, another underrated Tom Holland Spider-Man film. And then good, we have Spider-Man 3, you know, to end off the Tobey Maguire trilogy. Not as bad as people make it out to be. Sometimes I want to throw it in decent, but we're going to put it at good, because I do think when you rewatch this film, it is good. And then we have the Amazing Spider-Man 2 at decent. I don't think this is a bad movie necessarily. There's a lot of redeemable qualities here, but it's not a good movie. It's mediocre at best, and that's the list right there. So, all right, guys, that was the Spider-Man tier list. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts on my tier list down below. Did I have a great tier list, or should I have had certain things higher or lower? Where would you have placed certain films from each respective universe on your own tier list? Let me know all that down in the comment section down below. This was our first tier list on the channel. I'm looking forward to doing more of these style of videos, just so we could swap it up, bring something new to the Demigod ENT channel. And yeah, I had a blast making this video. Gave me an opportunity to talk about a ton of films that I haven't really had the opportunity to talk about on the channel at this point. And yeah, I had a great time. So let me know your thoughts on this list down in the comment section down below, and I'll catch you in the next video. Hope you enjoyed it. Peace.